Good evening, Harlem and Harlems of the world. I am Terri Wisdom, and this is Harlem Network News. We started Harlem Network News at the onset of COVID, and we are still here, assuring that Harlem and the Harlems of the world are informed. We know that knowledge is power, and here we are in 2024. And indeed, these are extremely trying times with the war in Gaza, the impending presidential election, just coming off the January 6th insurrection. Everywhere is war, and there's chaos in the air. And particularly for Black Americans, I would say that statement is extremely true. Tonight, we have with us Esther Iverem, and I'm hoping I'm saying it right. I'll take a correction.
Esther Iverem. Esther
Esther
Iverem.
Iverem. Okay.
Okay.
I'm taking it in. Esther Iverem. And she is with Pacifica Radio. And Esther, would you share a little bit about your show, about your background, whose you are, and who you are? Please. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, sure. And thank you for having me, Khadijah. I am creator, producer, and host of On the Ground, the Voices of Resistance from the Nation's Capital. We are on Pacifica Radio on, I think, more than 24 stations on Pacifica Radio, but also we're an independent podcast and we're an independent show that contributes to Pacifica Radio, which is a volunteer media, for 99% of us producers and journalists. And so people can also access our show on podcast, which at On the Ground Show with Esther Iverem. So On the Ground Show with Esther Iverem, people can find it on Apple, Google, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart, all those podcast platforms. And our website is onthegroundshow.org because a lot of people access, information on our computers, not on our phone. So you can always go to onthegroundshow.org, our website, and see all our shows for 10 years now, because
I was gonna ask that question. How long?
Yeah, so we are celebrating our 10th anniversary, celebrating our 10th anniversary this May 1st, 2024.
Okay, I love it. And even in the short time, Harlem Network News started in March of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So, time is marching on, and the work is getting harder, not easier, and the work is more important than ever. We want to focus this evening on the Gaza situation, the West Bank. We're very concerned because at this point, since October 7th, and I'm not going to reiterate everything that has occurred, but what we do know and understand is that approximately 23,000 Palestinians in this whole Gaza situation have been killed. Approximately 8,000 people have been wounded, and approximately 2,000 are missing. And this is all from Israeli attacks. It's what's being considered a genocide. So the question is,
before we go to our first question, can I just say something about those numbers?
Yes, please.
Because the 23,000 are the known dead.
Okay.
There's actually a number I saw from the United Nations Relief Agency that talked about another 5,000 to 7,000 being missing. And I prefer that number because it's dead or presumed dead at this point because of this barbaric attack. So many people being left to rot under rubble or in the streets, eaten by stray dogs. As horrible as that sounds.
Oh my God.
The way this attack is being waged by Israel. So we're really talking about probably more than 30,000 dead or presumed dead at this point, and there's actually another 50 to 60 wounded.
Okay.
Because I think you said 2,000. We have a number of tens of thousands wounded, we should
Okay.
say.
Thank you for that.
And because of the bombing of hospitals, many of those people will die because there isn't the hospitals have been taken away where these people could get care.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for shedding light. And I think that it's extremely important that we all do as much of our diligence as we can, because a lot of the mainstream media is just giving us misinformation and being guided by some of the powers that be they financial or be they political. So we really have to listen to a Harlem Network News, listen to an On the Ground, listen to an Al Jazeera, so that we can get as much fact and news and information. Because we also know that on the ground in Gaza, in the West Bank, that a lot of the reporters have been silenced. People's social media is being taken down. So we've got to do our diligence. Would you speak a little bit to that, Esther? Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the journalists because
And been killed. Journalists have been
yes, yes, that's the one. Yeah, I wish I had the number. It's such a horrific number, but more than 100 journalists have been murdered, uh, intentionally targeted. And Reuters did a report documenting how their journalists in Lebanon reporting from a distance from the battles on the border with Lebanon had been targeted by an Israeli tank. And one of their journalists was killed, the others were wounded. And so that was just one case where a news agency organization was able to actually do a serious investigation. But unfortunately, that's just one of dozens of journalists that have been murdered. We can just say murdered, and they're being targeted because this war is also a war of information, just like the war in Ukraine, just like every war that this country has fought for the last, certainly half century. And the pictures, they're like different wars going on. There's the actual what's happening on the ground,
Mhm.
where Israel is experiencing a defeat at the hands of Hamas. There's the information war, which Israel is losing because of those brave journalists who have continued to get the pictures out to us.
Mhm.
Despite being targeted, despite their families being killed, their
Yes.
wives and husbands and children being
Mothers and
targeted and
fathers,
murdered.
brothers and
I
sisters.
mean, this is barbaric. It's beyond just talking about war crime or international crime. And so when we see these brave journalists still posting on social media, we have to follow them, we have to support them. Some of them have ways of receiving donations that will get to them. And we just have to keep supporting them and support the media outlets that we know are trying to bring the truth. Like you mentioned Al Jazeera. I think we also talked about Electronic Intifada, Middle East Eye. These
Say that
are
again. You said electronic intifada. I want to be sure.
Intifada. Yeah,
Yes.
Electronic Intifada.
And
Long
another one that you mentioned, did you mention?
Middle East Eye.
Middle East Eye. Okay.
Right.
I'm asking you to repeat this because this is Harlem Network News. I'm Terri Wisdom, if you're just joining us. And I'm here with Esther Iverem, who has On the Ground on Pacifica Radio, as well as her podcast and website. And we are really doing a deep community dive into what is going on with the Gaza situation, because we know we need our community informed. Pretty much at this point, And we're excited to have you here, Esther. And we're asking tonight some tough and some vital questions. We have some questions that our audience has submitted, as well as our opt-ed team. And so we're kind of going straight, no chaser here tonight.
Okay, yeah.
So we're saying is one of the questions, the Harlem population or statement we serve is traumatized by continuous genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, and now the West Bank. One of the questions that we're getting from the listeners is whether there will be an escalation to the war, as we have recently seen the assassination of Hamas's top leader, commander in Lebanon, in the person of Saleh and Aj Arurir, and the assassination of Hezbollah leaders Wissam al-Tawil and also Ali Hussein Burji by the Israelis. The concern is, can we expect the same degree of genocide to be initiated by Israel in the West Bank as it's provoking the opening of a new war front? What are your thoughts based on your research, your experience, and familiarity with this topic? And, we may need to break down a little bit Gaza, West Bank, what's happening? Thank you.
Wow, there's a lot happening and there's a lot in that question.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But I want to, and I don't want to misdirect, move away from the question too much. But in terms of what's happening right now, I want everyone to know that on Thursday, that's January 11th. I'm not sure when this will air.
Yes, January 11th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, try to get
South Africa has brought a genocide case against Israel before the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And this is very important because I think that this is really job number one right now. And all the things that we've talked about, all the horrific war crimes, international crimes, crimes against humanity, atrocities that Israel has committed will be brought before this court. And the important thing about this is it's so important because it will put on the record all of these things that we're seeing in real time on our phones, on computers, on our TV screens, which the United States, our own government, is trying to deny. Of all the people, all the countries in the world, not only are we supplying every missile, every piece of weaponry that is bombing the innocent people of Gaza, but we're the ones that said that there is no genocide happening. Our State Department officials, our Pentagon officials, the White House officials, that it's without merit.
Okay.
All right. And so, I think that right now, the first thing is to follow this case. It will be aired. We can watch it online. We can watch the analysis of it, because all these things that
and the case is going to air.
Yes.
Right.
The International Court of Justice itself
Okay.
which is an arm of the United Nations, will air.
Great.
So just look that up. And if we can catch the link and put it in this chat, we can do that, right? But we'll let's make sure we leave the link for everybody when we finish. But people can watch it, and most likely it will be shared on social media. If you're a person who stays on Facebook or Instagram, most likely it will be aired on social media as well as on their website. And I guess my point is that all these things that we're talking about, the murder of more than 23,000 people, the killing of journalists, the bombing of hospitals, mosques, the most ancient Christian church in Palestine bombed, dozens of mosques, clinics, UN refugee agencies, schools, all these places bombed in a carpet bombing manner. And so it will put these things on the record. It will show the world, excuse me,
Thank you.
it will show the world the proof of the things that we are witnessing that people are trying to deny. And then on Friday, I believe that Israel gets to respond. Several countries have joined in the
Now,
petition.
South Africa,
That's South Africa.
South Africa is taking the step, leading the way, and several other countries have joined in.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Excuse me. So I think that that is really very important because we have existed for more than 3 months now with this barbaric attack happening, and people starting to feel kind of helpless about nothing being done.
And what we can do. And for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Terri Wisdom. This is Harlem Network News, and we are here speaking truth to power. We are here with renowned journalist Esther Iverem of On Tghe Ground and Pacifica Radio, her podcast website, and she, has had this over 10 years, and really goes out there and makes sure people are informed and fearlessly brings it, fearlessly brings it, and speaking that truth to power. So what about the expansion to the West Bank? We're glad that that's happening at the UN. It's important, it go on record, and it's very concerning. What do you think in terms of the US taking the stance that they're taking? That, like, what is that about?
Well,
And it's the US, but we, the people, but who are these representatives that are taking this stance for us? What is that about?
I'm sorry. I kind of feel like I'm answering the questions like I'm one question behind you.
Okay.
So
Okay.
because you did ask about the West Bank, and I guess your first question had many parts. So let me at
Yes.
least deal with the West Bank and the whole issue of
Okay.
the wider war,
Okay. Thank you.
because we have to understand that the attacks on Gaza didn't start after October 7th, and the attacks on the West Bank didn't start after October 7th. They ramped up for sure, but before October 7th, hundreds of, I should say more than 100 Palestinians had been murdered by IDF soldiers or settlers, illegal settlers in the West Bank. Okay. And there have, in addition to killing people, there are settlers are allowed, is illegal settlers are allowed to take over people's homes, kick them out with impunity, claim that it's their house. And this has been going on not just for this year, but for decades. And that's the way that Israel has expanded these illegal settlements all over the West Bank, to the point that I think the last figure I heard was 485,000 illegal settlers and another couple 100,000 in East Jerusalem. So the people of the West Bank are being terrorized, and the United States is turning a blind eye. And this is directly linked to fears of a wider war, because what we have in Palestine, the historic Palestine in that region, is something called the axis of resistance. And so it's not just Hamas. Hamas has allies and comrades in Hezbollah, in Iraq, in Syria, and Iran, and in Yemen, which has been blocking international trade, blocking ships from going to Israel as their way of supporting the Palestinian people. blocking shipments going to Israel. And Israel is an import economy. And so that's a flashpoint. The only thing I can say, and I'm not an expert, I'm just kind of conveying what I've been able to read and understand and listen to experts, is that Israel would like to provoke a larger war, a regional war, and would like to drag the US into a regional war because it is not winning the ground war. It is not
Okay.
winning against Hamas in Gaza.
Mhm.
Despite the horrific death toll of civilians, it is not defeating Hamas militarily. Israel is experiencing a military defeat. And so the only way
Okay.
they can win the war is to widen it
Mhm.
and to try to draw the United States in, because they do have air superiority, and they know United States has air superiority. And so if they can drag the US into a war, then they can carry on with these kinds of barbaric aerial bombings of civilian areas. And that's been their playbook throughout these decades when they have invaded Lebanon in the past 3 times and been defeated on the ground. But
Okay.
they managed to bomb the civilians, just like they're bombing Gaza right now. We know that they continually to bomb Syria
Mhm.
illegally,
Okay.
and joined in by the US, which is maintaining an illegal military base in Syria, stealing Syria's oil and in its most prosperous wheat area, keeping these resources from people. We know that the United States recently bombed Baghdad, back in Iraq again. Why
Wow.
are we still there? Those people voted for us to leave, after we murdered Qasem Soleimani on their land, was it 4 years ago? So um it's
There's a lot going on and the pot is stirring, but I would like a little bit of clarification because what in a broadband way we're seeing is the thousands of people being bombed and being murdered. And we're hearing about Israel saying they got to get Hamas, they got to stop Hamas, and the people are suffering. What is the connection of Hamas to the people? But we're really not, I think it's very interesting that you're sharing and speaking about Israel losing on the ground. What is happening? Because we're not really getting clear information on Hamas, fighting back. We're not really
oh,
hearing that.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So when
That's
you're saying
interesting.
that, we're not getting that
Yeah.
in a media standpoint. It appears that the people are just being bombed and killed, and they're not defending. And what is really going on
Yeah,
in
I guess
your
it is
opinion?
it's probably shocking for people to hear me say that
Mhm.
that Israel is losing, because we just see this carnage, and this carpet bombing, which is a war crime, really. So if you are able to check out media like I mentioned, especially
Okay.
Electronic Intifada,
Okay.
you will see videos posted by Hamas of them destroying Israeli tanks. Uh,
Okay.
the There are actual figures coming out that Israel admits itself of the number of casualties it has inflicted.
Okay.
It has the number of dead soldiers, basically,
Okay. Got
and
it.
and wounded. And there's a lot of discrepancies in terms of the numbers wounded, because Israel will put out one number, but even reporters in Israel who check hospitals, you know, document, tens of thousands of, well, thousands of people, soldiers wounded, IDF soldiers wounded. So I think that, like you mentioned earlier, we have to go to alternative media to really get the information. And so we said earlier also how there are many different wars, and
Yeah.
so the military war is the war between the IDF and Hamas. And
Okay.
Hamas has a very sophisticated tunnel network, which has allowed it to basically pop up in these areas, even when Israel says that they have areas under control,
Mhm.
and to continue to fight. And they continue to fight. And I
Okay.
understand that Israel is now, they are saying that they're withdrawing most of their troops from
Right.
Gaza.
Yeah, and
So
that was not to interrupt you, but that was another point of clarification because we're seeing on some national news media that Israel has decided to withdraw, but then live we're seeing that Israel just like dropped bombs across,
exactly. So it's
so
just
it's
a
hard
it's
to
just
understand
playing with
what
language. It's
yeah,
just
what's
playing a language because they mean they're withdrawing their ground troops because the
okay.
ground troops have faced massive defeat,
Got it. Okay.
right? And
Mhm.
so when you talk about hundreds of tanks being destroyed, and that means that they have fewer resources to fight some so-called multi-front war, that when you have hundreds of soldiers, if not thousands, killed or wounded, then that is a big blow to the IDF and these forces. So
Okay.
it means that the ground forces are being withdrawn. At the same time, I'm not sure if all of them are being withdrawn, but it means that they are still continuing their aerial assault, dropping bombs, sending drones to target families, sometimes whole families being wiped out um, in this attack.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And just that point of information, because this is information that we're actually not really getting. So you heard it first here on Harlem Network News with Esther Iverem of On the Ground, really speaking the truth to power. On the question of the West Bank and the escalation, because the West Bank is the other occupied territory where the Palestinians are. What's happening there?
Yeah, well, like we were saying, the West Bank has been a flashpoint for several years now, and it is the place where Israel continues to create illegal settlements to grab Palestinian land, destroy their olive orchards. As a matter of fact, I think one news report said that there was no olive harvest this year. And maybe that wasn't for all of the West Bank, but for key portions of it. Steal their land, destroy their farms, set fire to the olive groves, um, assault um, Palestinian men, women, and children, um, subject them to numerous checkpoints so that they cannot travel from place to place. This is, as Bishop Desmond Tutu said, worse than any type of South African apartheid that people experience there. And when you add that to post October 7th, that's only escalated. Bombings in the refugee camps of the West Bank, um, thousands of people basically kidnapped and imprisoned. So when there was a so-called prisoner swap, for example, a few weeks back, when there were Palestinian prisoners released in exchange for the Israeli prisoners in Gaza, in the meantime, Israel had kidnapped the number of people off the streets of the West Bank to equal the ones that they released. So the numbers swelled from 5,000 to 10,000 Palestinians, in these dungeons, most of them without any kind of trial or charges, many of them children.
Mhm.
who, when they're released, their bones are broken. Are, they tell of being tortured. They tell of murders. They tell of people being tortured to death in these Israeli prisons. So this is an overall authoritarian, I don't care how people want to parse it. This is an authoritarian terrorist fascist state. This is this is not some playground, and this is the state that we are supporting. We are supporting a country that is uh, the Palestinian activists here, they don't even call it they don't even say Israel. They say the Zionist entity. The Zionist
Okay, I
entity
hear
is
you.
torturing, murdering people at will, and they're used to having this impunity, this shield of the United States taking up for them and doing their bidding at the United Nations, vetoing every resolution that is passed almost unanimously to condemn these illegal settlements. And so now all the chickens are coming home to roost. I mean, the fact is that some people say,
Appropriate
oh,
statement.
this case at the International Court of Justice, it's still going to take a long time for it to have any effect, but it can have an immediate effect. If the court says that there must be an immediate cessation of these attacks on people, it can have that kind of impact. And also, it will um, it would just put in the cold light, all of these things that Israel is doing. It will be the first time that anyone is trying to make Israel be accountable for this. It's just been decades of it doing, you know, constantly stealing the land of Palestinians, killing Palestinians, dispossessing. I mean, Israel was created by a genocide, by the expulsion of 750,000 people. I should say the expulsion and murder of
Thank
750,000
you.
people. Well, called the Nakba, and this has been since the beginning, and uh, things are just coming home to roost right now. The United States can't keep up with this level of hypocrisy, talking about, human rights and defending democracy here and around the world. I mean, people are looking at Biden and his team like, you sound crazy. you know, I mean, either you crazy or you think I am, because what is happening in Gaza is not defending democracy. You are contributing to a genocide. And, this meme, Genocide Joe, won't go away. And it shouldn't go away, because it means that those of us who have a mouth to speak and eyes to see are going to say what we're seeing, and that we're not going to be dissuaded by these talking points about these are human shields and Israel's trying to be gentle. No, they're not. No, they're not. Not when you target hospitals and you don't find anything there. You keep saying, "Oh, they have tunnels there. They have this there." They haven't shown any kind of evidence like that. And when they try to show evidence, it turns out to be a joke. You don't kill journalists, kill doctors, still kill medical staff, kill UN staff. Um, More journalists than were killed in all of World War II and the Vietnam War have been killed.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a pivotal point in the world.
Yes.
I'm Terri Wisdom. This is Harlem Network News, and I have here with me this
Esther
evening
Iverem.
Esther
Esther Iverem.
Iverem
Okay.
of On the Ground, and we're having some very intense and honest conversations. And it's very interesting that when all of this came to the forefront from October 7th, many public officials, many people, journalists really shied away from speaking about these issues, shied away from it. Some people lost their jobs. We see that presidents of universities were hauled into Congress, and based on what they said, they were some way fired and let go. So, or they resigned because they had to. So this is the kind of pressure. So it's really super important, especially for us as people of color that have a relationship with the Palestinian people based on what our experience has been. And I do continue and just say that some of what happened in Germany and with Hitler happened because people were silent, and silence is complicity. And when people began to speak, it was too late. So we've got to look at it, and we've also got to look at just the psychological complex that hurt people hurt people.
And you
So,
know, it's interesting you talked about silence in Germany, but you know, there was another silence also because there was the German genocide in what is now Namibia.
mm,
And when that happened, this is well before what happened in Germany when Germany went into what I guess they called Southwest Africa at that point. I'm trying to remember
okay, thank
where
you.
it has the current name renamed by the people. And that genocide of the indigenous people there was
Mhm,
almost a rehearsal for them. And because it was African people, indigenous African people,
mhm.
this kind of genocide, and you know that Hitler, that you know, no one said anything. That was a silence, right? And we know that Hitler received his inspiration, if you want to call it,
Mhm.
because of the genocide of Native Americans in this country and the Jim Crow policies
Connection, connection.
of segregation and apartheid, and those same type of conditions inspired South Africa and inspired Israel, because Israel was born the same year that the so-called apartheid laws were instituted in South Africa. So South Africans feel they have a not only an obligation under the Genocide Convention, but a moral and historical obligation to fight for the the humanity of Palestinian people. And so I'm so proud of South Africa for stepping forward in this whole big wide world of people who were afraid of US retribution, or afraid that
Wrap it up.
the US could do something more to them. You know, looking at this horrific bombing, it makes people think, wow, these people could bomb us, you know what I mean? Because there's nothing holding them back. What's happened in the world now, I was listening to a scholar, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, you know, the way the international law the is being ignored and trampled on, it's turning the world into a world where you only get to live if you can kill. That you only get to live if you can kill. And that's not a world I want to live in. But with every day of the US propping up this genocide, it's turning us into a very barbaric world, you know, where you only get to live if you can kill. And so, to answer your earlier question, to go back to that, that is really the stakes here as far as a wider war happening.
Mhm.
You know, the wider axis of resistance is not going to allow this genocide to continue, and they're not going to allow Israel to um, bring the U.S. into this war without it becoming a wider war.
Okay,
That's
thank you,
what's going to happen,
thank you for that.
and they're not going to allow um, continued attacks on other regions and other people without people hitting back. I don't know what the trigger point will be. The leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, he is a key person who will decide that. And if Israel has not been able to defeat Hamas, they definitely cannot defeat Hezbollah, as they didn't defeat them 3 times before. They just know that they have this air power and that they can threaten to bomb Beirut.
Okay.
And, the thing is, the bombs can go back the other way too.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that brings us to a segue, which is more questions coming from our listeners and from our team, our team that's digging and diving. And the question is, we understand that the Biden administration is speaking with forked tongue in many ways. On one hand, they're saying that they are trying to protect civilian life while they are providing Israel with funding and artillery to commit genocide. What do you feel the impact of this behavior will be on the outcome of the presidential election as Biden's approval rate continues to fall? If you can give us some background and context in your view.
Well, I think this is going to be an election like no election I've seen in my lifetime. I don't believe that the young people, what I would call the conscious members of the African American community, which is the base of the Democratic Party, the anti-Zionist Jewish population and other non-Jewish population, the Muslim population, especially in areas like Michigan, these people are not voting for Biden. Biden only won Michigan, I believe, by 11,000 votes. That's either the figure for Georgia or Michigan. So please excuse me if I'm switching those, right?
Right.
But we're talking about thousands of votes in the balance, right? In terms of a small margin of victory, right? So I still, even though the Iowa caucuses are later this month,
Yes.
and it
Coming upon us.
supposedly will kick off the Democratic and Republican primary season, etc. It's not really clear to me that Biden is the candidate, but it sure looks like it. They're not letting anybody else in. They're not even putting other names on some of the primary ballots. I think there may be several states only putting Biden on the ballot. And so how democratic is that, right? So I think that the third parties are going to play a big role. We know on the Democratic side there are several candidates. Jill Stein, the Green Party, is probably the best organized opposition because they have ballot access in all the states pretty much. And we know that there's still the candidates out there, Cornel West and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So there are other people running, and I believe that many of the disaffected people will be looking at some of these other alternative parties. And a lot of these candidates are banking on the fact that the biggest block of voters are the voters that don't turn out, that have stopped voting or never voted. And I think that they want to make the point that we have a smaller and smaller percentage of the population actually choosing our presidents, our elected officials. And on top of that, we have this duopoly. It's not really a two-party system. We have this duopoly that creates a system where people don't even really have a choice. Why, of a population of more than 300 million, we have a choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? That is no choice at all. And so if we're supposed to have a democracy, it is failing us. And I think many people feel that way. I've gotten some email from people who I respect politically and who are running that line to me that, look, if we don't band together and support Biden, Trump's going to come back, and Trump's just going to be a dictator. He's declaring himself to be a dictator, and to spare us of this right-wing menace, we need to put Biden back in. But those of us who are witnessing a genocide right now and feel like, okay, if it can happen over there, that it can happen to us. Those of us who understand the history of colonialism, disenfranchisement of indigenous people, enslavement,
Trail of Tears, all of that.
yeah, those of us who understand the kind of trajectory of history, we see that as being an attack on all of us. We see the attack on Palestine and Palestinians as being an attack on us. We relate that to the police murders here in this country. We relate that to the killing of Vietnamese people, or the killing of Chileans, the killing of our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico, or anybody else who dares to want to fight back, or the takeover of Hawaii, or the slaughter, the genocide of people in the Congo, which no one's ever talks about. Okay, that King Leopold, the 6 million in the Congo murdered and killed with their hands cut off. So, look, I think that the world has changed very fast, and these neocons surrounding Biden, they don't. I would say they don't have a clue, but I think they do have a clue, but they just have the wrong one, and they just don't recognize that the world is changing so fast. The U.S. just can't keep going around bullying everyone into submission. That the global South sees what's happening, and they see the hypocrisy, and they see the danger of allowing a U.S. hegemon to prop up an authoritarian, racist apartheid state and another settler colonial state, right? And with impunity. And it's just taking the mask off. It's taking the mask off here. It's taking the mask off for so many people around the world who really see that all these declarations around democracy and human rights and standing up for those principles is just very hollow and hypocritical.
Okay, well, I'm Terri Wisdom once again, and this is Harlem Network News, and I am here with Esther Iverem.
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 Okay. Oh my gosh.
Iverem.
I gotta send you a speller.
Okay, Esther Iverem. Okay, from the On the Ground and Pacifica Radio, her podcast, and her website, and really, you answered without me even asking one of the critical questions that our listeners and our op-ed team had, which are what are the alternatives that our listeners have who clearly have lost faith in both the Democratic Party of President Biden and the hawkish nature of the Republicans, including Trump, to continue this war and support Israel. And you didn't even call it Israel because, and the Prime Minister Netanyahu, and what impact is this going to have on the coming November presidential election? And clearly, Black Americans, though we're only approximately 13%, we carry great weight in the presidential election. And you did mention some of the candidates and the Green Party and Cornel West and Robert Kennedy Jr., so you really answered the question. But the second part of their question was, should African Americans seek viable candidates from the Black community to run for the presidency as a vacuum is created by the failure of these two parties? What's your contextual thought, which you pretty much gave?
Oh, well, yeah, I think that we should all engage in the electoral process for sure. And we should not be afraid to cast our votes for the people who reflect our values. I witnessed this online debate Sean King, he had millions of followers on Instagram. He was taken off
Yeah.
they took his account away. And one of the things that he said before they took his account away was that there was this kind of online argument because he said he wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden. He couldn't. And so some of the kind of neocon people got on, oh, I was with you until then, if you don't vote for
Mhm.
Biden, you're just going to, that's a vote for Trump or whatever.
Right.
And people are just so tired of that now. It's like, because what did we do? We rallied people together, eh, and we elect, people held their nose and voted for Biden in 2020.
Or
And
turn a blind eye.
we got him back into office. He wasn't people's first choice, he wasn't their second choice, but they said, okay. So he got in, taking a lot of the platform and promises that Bernie had created around healthcare. Excuse me. One more sip.
Okay.
Mhm. I should get a cough drop or something. But using Bernie's platform and but didn't really do those things, and didn't really deliver the goods that he said he would. And now he got us into two wars, Ukraine and now in Gaza. I don't.
It's a problem, and it's important that we speak out, or we at least raise the issues, which is what we're doing here this evening. Food for thought, so that people can make some educated decisions, make some choices, stand up and engage. I mean, we even are dealing with, and this is another of our op-ed team and listeners' question, and we're going to wrap up. This is a lot, on the issue of immigration and the impact of illegal immigrants at our borders. Should Black mayors in key Black cities challenge President Biden's run for the presidency and the way the immigrant situation is impacting their cities and particularly their Black and brown populations? Can you give some context and thought and opinion on this?
I saw some news reports not that long ago. Now you're in New York, and
Yes.
I saw that all of a sudden Eric Adams was being investigated for some kind of improprieties and everything, and it was obvious that the political machinery was being turned against him. I guess he said something that he wasn't supposed to say. He challenged uh what maybe the lack of immigration policy, or Biden's lack of poor immigration policy. And so what I think is happening is that it's just another situation of the chickens coming home to roost in that situation also.
Okay.
The lack of comprehensive immigration policy. Mama lose. I don't.
Okay. We're saying a lot, and it's like reverberating everywhere. And we're wrapping up. We're seeing, and you answered this early on. It was a question about the blockades that are happening in the Red Sea, that Yemen is putting up, and the vessels, and Yemen really is trying to assure that artillery and goods are not going to continue to go to Israel. I mean, to get to Israel, so that they can continue to kill the people of Gaza, the West Bank, and the fact that the world just doesn't want to see this escalation. And you spoke on that early. You also spoke on the just trying to make sure I'm getting everybody's questions in. You spoke on South Africa, the charges of genocide, and we asked everyone, and we're going to give them a link so they can tune in tomorrow with the International Court of Justice at the United Nations and the answer. And then last but not least, We know that there is a huge demonstration coming up on Saturday, January 13th. We're in 2024 in Washington, D.C. And can you tell us a little bit about that? How this demonstration, and we had a huge demonstration here in New York that shut down bridges and stopped traffic for
Yeah,
hours.
yay, New York. Yay,
Oh,
New York, you know.
right.
Sister city in
And trust
protest.
me, you can't find a Palestinian flag in New York or almost anywhere in the country. They're all sold out. So
Right,
interesting.
good, good.
So if you would just share a little bit about this march coming up, how it's going to be structured, what the impact of it can be, and the importance of, I guess, everyone getting involved, particularly African Americans, indigenous people, brown people, what everybody. So talk. Thank you.
Yes, and I apologize, I was losing my voice. If I can kind of wrap the question around immigration into this, because this is about us being a global community, and the people coming to the United States from the southern border, they're largely coming from countries that the United States has interfered in. They have placed, tremendous sanctions, murderous sanctions on Venezuela, on Cuba, on so many countries in this hemisphere, inflicted a narco regime in Honduras, staged a coup there and brought in a narco regime, uh, putting tremendous pressures on Mexico. And so we have to always remember that many of the people coming to the southern border, who are not only from this hemisphere, the people are coming from Africa and Asia and all
Yes,
places
yes, we're
to
seeing them
Brazil,
all
and
here
coming up
in New
through
York City.
South America and Central America, through dangerous places to try to come to the southern border. And the other thing we have to remember is that um, there the United States has rolled out the red carpet for Ukrainians, right? So I think I mentioned before that the journalist Juan Gonzalez talked about a recent report where most of the immigrants really that they were getting these services and accommodations in Chicago were Ukrainian. There
Interesting.
was a um a worker, what would you call him? Maybe a federal contractor,
Mhm.
who related to me how he was being asked as part of his job to find jobs and accommodations for Ukrainians,
Mm.
right? Now, I know that's a little different. That's getting off the subject, but see, but when all these
All of
conversations,
these things are connected.
oh
They're all
yeah, when all these conversations come up in
that's
Fox News and in the Congress here, they're always talking about Black and brown people. That's primarily their target when they start talking about it's an invasion and all of that. They're not looking at the people who are coming here from Ukraine and getting services and getting jobs and everything, and being told that this is your right. They're being settled, right? But the, people coming up from the border, scurrying through the desert, dying. I mean, it's a horror show. But we're a global community, and we're coming together on Saturday, January 13th at 1 p.m. And the place has changed. It was the National Mall, but now it's Freedom Plaza, back where we had the tremendous November 4th rally that drew more than 300,000 people. Estimates between 300,000 and a half million people on November 4th. The
okay.
largest
Freedom Plaza.
Yeah, the largest rally for Palestine in U.S. history. And so we expect no less this time, but who knows, buses are coming from around the country. Somebody told me there were 25 buses coming from Chicago. Wow. So I'm
Okay.
like, wow. So maybe, and that was then, maybe there are more now.
Mhm.
So, but
And
coming
the
from all
purpose
over.
of the march and the rollout of the march and some of the speakers, if you can just highlight and yeah.
Well, the program has not been totally revealed, but this program is being sponsored by the American Muslim Task Force for Palestine. And this
Okay.
includes some of the major Muslim organizations in our country: CARE, American Muslims for Palestine, the Muslim Legal Fund, Muslim American Society of Young Muslims, and the national partner is the Answer Coalition. And I'm a member of the Answer Coalition, and uh being the national partner, they're doing a lot of the logistics. The
Okay. And what
these
is the answer coalition?
The Answer Coalition is Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. And it was born in the days leading up to the invasion of Iraq.
Okay.
And if you remember those demonstrations, there was one day when, if they counted the people around the world, millions of people marched to stop that, to try to stop that war. That was the Answer Coalition organizing here in the States and around the world
Okay.
during that time. And so that's Saturday, January 13th, beginning at 1 p.m. at Freedom Plaza. That's where we met before. And what's happening is, like, people say, oh, Freedom Plaza, that's too small. But what happens is that we take the street all the way back, all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol and beyond. And there are jumbotrons set up, like, for blocks and blocks and blocks, so people can see
And
the
here.
actual march, right? So it's exciting. It's exciting, historic, another historic day for people to raise their voices and to, you know, also get away from this feeling of powerlessness. I was at a Kwanzaa event for the last day on New Year's, and it was two elderly women who were there, and they were saying, well, what can we do? Because they were feeling this weight, this weight that so many of us are feeling right now, because it's like we see this horror unfolding, and we know our government is doing something about, is funding it, is enabling it, that
Using our tax
they're
dollars.
making our tax dollars complicit. They're making us complicit.
Yes,
without our permission, without our permission. And so they were feeling this tremendous frustration. And so we were telling them about the march, and we were telling them what, to go to this, answercoalition.org and get the information. And another place, well, for local DMV things, it's a shutitdownforpalestine.org, but that's like mainly DC actions.
Okay.
But, so we expect a lot of people to come out, because it is one way of shaking off this feeling of just outrage that you can't do anything, that you can raise your voice, you can come out and you can march, and you can, you can say ceasefire now, and you can be with, hundreds of thousands of other people saying the same thing and not feel alone. And, there's so many people scared on their jobs, on campuses, they're being targeted, they're being, but even so, many people are coming together, and so that they don't feel alone. And January 13th is another place where you can see that you represent the majority of the people in the world. That's what we have to remember. Every vote at the UN, every vote in other types of bodies, it's always to support the Palestinian people, because we understand that the Palestine issue is an issue of justice. It's the issue of justice. And we all feel that, and we know that in our heart, in our mind. And so we can't, it's almost like we can't, they're trying to take away our humanity by making us look on that and turn away. Or act like they don't matter. Right. Yeah. So it's a way of reclaiming our humanity and saying, not in our name, never again.
Not with our money.
Not with our money,
Yes,
right.
Yes. And I mean, I think that's some of it. We're wrapping up. I mean, basically, you brought it home, gave the closing statement. We encourage everyone to get down to Washington, D.C., to Freedom Plaza on Saturday. The rally begins at 1, and I guess it'll go on probably till 5-ish or 6, whatever. But where is Freedom Plaza logistically? for those who are not DC folks?
Oh yeah, well it's in downtown DC. It's actually right across from what we call the Wilson Building, which is our city hall. So if you know DC, it's at like around 14th and Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest. The
Okay.
closest metro would be like Metro Center.
Mhm.
That's a good metro
Good.
stop. Yeah, if
Okay.
you're on the metro, yeah. Metro
Okay.
Center.
And what's the Metro stop again, please? Thank you.
Metro Center.
Metro Center.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we encourage folks to come out, to raise their voices, to get rid of the powerless feeling. And it really is all connected. It's all circular. It's worldwide. And there's a lot of duality. There's a lot of misinformation. I mean, here in New York City, and this is where it also is duly impacting Black and Brown people. I know that I can definitely say that in Harlem, in our public schools are 99.99999% Black and Brown young people, children, young people. And we have an education system that's already bursting at the seams. So now the immigrants are being dropped into this same school system. We already have a homeless housing crisis and don't have the funding. So those that were in shelters are having to be moved out of, so it's a very
Yeah.
critical situation. And it's all related, as all this funding is going to kill and do genocide.
Right. And also that went
Yeah,
to Ukraine. They're asking for more
yeah,
money for Ukraine.
yes,
Like, like how many tens of billions
yeah.
more?
So
Like,
when is charity beginning at home?
yeah.
When?
And it's
And
not charity. It's our
yeah,
money.
it's our money.
It's not
Thank
our
you.
money. It's
Thank
not
you.
charity.
That's a
It's
cliche.
like take care of home
That's a
first.
cliche.
And that's one thing you have to remember, like in these spaces, like how we talk about money. It's our money. It's not charity. And
Absolutely.
these people start in
Absolutely.
Congress, they start talking like, like, oh, cutting Social Security, cutting this, cutting that. Well, wait a minute. That's our money. We don't want it to go for bombs. We want it to go for healthcare, or education,
Education.
or to clean up our environment. Stop
Absolutely.
climate crisis. We want it to go somewhere else.
Okay.
So
So final statement, what else can we do? How can we impact our public officials and representatives if they're misrepresenting what we want and what we believe? What can we do?
well, I saw Code Pink, and that's I think codepink.org. They have a petition that just average citizens can sign supporting South Africa's uh, genocide petition. But there are all over the country. There are everyday people confronting their elected officials, letting them know, hey, if you're not speaking out against this, you are complicit with genocide.
Thank you.
I saw it was an elected official in Massachusetts being confronted. I saw that on Breakthrough News on Instagram. And I think that we have to confront our
Right. In fact, in his speaking, rolling out the election, actually President Biden was confronted by folks
exactly.
saying stuff.
And the nerve to use our
Yeah.
church, to talk with this what you call forked tongue. That's crazy. The fact that he went to Mother Emanuel, where white supremacists killed our people, and you don't see the hypocrisy in that, standing up there talking about and at the same time funding a genocide. It's just a larger scale of what was done at Mother Emanuel.
And very scary that there are those elected officials that stood up and rah-rahed for the circumstance.
We are in a very this situation, as horrific as it is brought so many things to light for so many people.
Right.
And one of it is
Pull the
that
scab off.
the impact of the
COVID, the
Israel
scab got
lobby.
pulled off and it's getting pulled off again. So
Yeah, the impact of the Israel lobby, AIPAC, a lot of people starting to wake up and say, hey, you know, no, you spent years with this Russiagate BS. Israel is the one that is impacting our elected officials and our elections, and trying to have a role, not just trying to have a role, having a major role, you know, offering people millions of dollars to run against Rashida Tlaib, offering people millions of dollars to challenge the few progressive legislatures who don't always do their job, I know, but they stand up a lot for the issues we care about when other people don't. So a lot of people want to call them, oh, the squad, the fraud, or whatever, but our political system is in such a bad shape. It's almost like we're happy to have a half a loaf than nothing,
Very, very interesting. And Hartford, I mean, I applaud those that are speaking out, like Jamal Bowman, just coming out strong, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who went and saw and spoke about what is, so it takes courage, but it's important that we all stand and we all be about that. So quick closing statements, Esther Iverem.
Oh, I think we said it all. I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing so many people out on Saturday, January 13th, on Freedom Plaza. That's 1 p.m. And it's so beautiful when the people come together to show those who think they're in power that no, the people have the power. We have the power. We put them there, and we should feel that it's also our right to remove them, right? And that these are our tax dollars, like we said before, right? So not in our name, never again, not with our money.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And this has really been a robust conversation here on Harlem Network News. We also do have a petition for ceasefire, and we're going to upgrade that petition to add many of the things that we've spoken about, particularly the UN situation in South Africa. We're going to add and upgrade that to our petition, and we encourage you to sign. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to follow us on all the social medias, and also to donate. You can go to harlemnetworknews.org. You can reach out to us directly at 646-261-5397. We'll be putting links in Harlem Network News at gmail.com. It's critical, and as they say, and as was said at the Apollo Theater so gracefully with Forces of Nature and Regeneration Night, it's nation time. So we'll end on that note. And thank you for hanging in with us. We appreciate you.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Always happy to join you.
Okay, blessings. Thank you. Thank you for your clarity. And people love the way you impart the information and they can understand it. So thank you. And please, when is your show so that folks can go in and hear and
yeah. So
let's do that.
Again, I said it earlier, but if you want to follow my show, go to onthegroundshow.org. And you can also follow the podcast. You can subscribe for free on all your podcast platforms. The podcast is On the Ground with Esther Iverem. And I'll spell my name. It's Esther, and the last name's Iverem. But as soon as you put On the Ground with, and you put an E there, it pretty much pops up. And there's like a little sign that says On the Ground with green lettering. So those are the main ways. If you want to hear on Pacifica Radio, well, you can, it's the same as the podcast, but if you're in DC, it's on oh my God, WPFW on Fridays at 10 a.m. in New York. It's on WBAI at 10 a.m. on most Fridays. Sometimes they have a fundraiser, but that's my time slot.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And it's great to collaborate. And as we know, it takes a village, and knowledge is power. Blessings.
Okay.
And power to the people. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Power
Thank
to the people. Okay.
you. Okay.